When Splatoon 3 released, it quickly became a common opinion that Brellas were the worst class in the game. After all, they basically didn't function properly with the bugs at the time around their shields, and many assumed that was the full story. A long time later, in 8.0, some changes to how Brella shields worked actually made them more consistent than Splatoon 2's, at least to me personally. They're for sure comparable. Despite that though, and 2 years of new kits and a few buffs, nothing changed with the class's perception. Now it's been almost 3 years since Splatoon 3's launch, and a brand new Brella was added and subsequently given some pretty solid buffs, and we're still here. How did 75% of a weapon class end up this bad? Today, I want to take a look at the story and see if this will ever change. Oh, and if you like the video, consider subscribing. Thank you. So I think the most important thing to understand is what made Brellas good originally. Let's jump back quite a bit to Splatoon 2 after Brellas got their buffs. We'll talk about the stronger states of both Brella, Brella, and Kensa Undercover Brella for reference here. In general, what makes Brellas very powerful is their tanking capability. Splatoon is a game with a lot of fast kill times and quick movement, and it's incredibly rare to have an effective tool to slow down the game, especially when it comes to health. But Brellas, of course, have a shield that allows them to work with that. This gives them a massive advantage. In particular, they can be difficult to 1v1, not necessarily because they can kill you easily, but because they can drag out the fight rather effectively, even after some ink efficiency nerfs. Their ability to hold space, counter specific matchups, and force more coordinated play ultimately gave them a lot of power in slightly different ways. Tent with its giant shield being able to tank and a threatening one-shot if you tried to close the gap, Brella with its intimidating matchups against a lot of the class and relatively solid mobility, and Undercover Brella with its Kensa kit. Even with the weaker shield, having to shoot down both torp or tank the extra damage, as well as deal with armor that could allow you to regen the shield or tank an extra hit, made the weapon incredibly effective to the point where it shut down slower weapon matchups. Now, I've been talking about Brellas very directly, the strengths that they specifically have in this game. But there's another factor to consider here. Splatoon 2 was by far the best game for Brellas to be a part of. There's a lot of indirect reasons for that, from the meta game at the time to them being one of the best ways to deal with MPU, to a lot of the global range specials benefiting its ability to get in and hold space effectively. But the most important one you need to know is Ink Armor. Ink Armor is a special that changed to the entire team, and it gives you the ability to tank one hit regardless of damage. This was, in general, broken for Splatoon 2, and it mitigated a whole lot of weapon classes' ability to function properly. But it was best with Brellas more than anything else because they already had the ability to shield. Mixed with armor, that could be very powerful. In particular, Sorella Brella got a bit of a raid boss title for when it had armor and also its Splat Bomb Rush, because you had to deal with both of those and the Brella shield, which made it almost impossible to fight even with a team. However, what made armor even better for it is how it functioned with the weapon's balancing. In order to deal with Brella's oppressive ability to shield, there were natural counters built into the game, mainly chargers and blasters. Blasters had the ability to hit around the shield as well as high damage to it, and chargers had even higher damage, in most cases being able to break the shield immediately. However, you might know that both these weapons are primarily one-shot or slow-firing weapons, and therefore armor is very good into them. Basically, this special protected Brella from dealing with its harshest counters. And so because of that, a lot of the nerfs they did in Splatoon 2 didn't work properly at balancing the weapon. Eventually, things had to get really harsh. Kensa Undercover Brella had its kit severely toned down in sub and special weapon output, with no compensation to the weaker main weapon to deal with that. Tenebrella lost a bit of its damage and shield HP, though for the most part it ended up surviving a bit, and I'll talk about that later. And normal Brella, of course, got hit the hardest, losing out on a lot of its damage. The main takeaway from this is that Brella required 7 pellets to kill instead of 6. This might not seem like it matters that much if you're simply good enough, however, hitting a lot of pellets on Brella is very difficult. And even if you hit all 7 pellets, you have to be close enough in order for that kill time to happen without damage drop-off. Some people could say that this might be a skill issue, but we've had a little over 5 years since this buff in 2 different games to see otherwise, and the end result is Brella pretty much didn't have any notable success either in competitive play or in solo ranked. So if it is a skill issue, then yeah, maybe they made the weapon too difficult. But these nerfs on its own, I don't think were enough to totally kill the class. Saying that these were responsible for it totally isn't accurate here. And to talk about what made this problem so much worse, we have to jump to Splatoon 3. I talked prior about Splatoon 2 being the best game for them, so why did Splatoon 3 hurt them? Again, there's a lot more things I could talk about here, such as the map design making it harder to find preferable fights for the weapon, or the specials being generally better at dealing with Brellas. However, I want to focus on what I believe is the main one: the counters to the weapon. The counters of blasters and chargers work in this game, and the weapons are generally a bit more powerful. On top of that though, Splatoon 3 added a new counter of the Splatanas. These can't hit around the shield, but specialize in high damage to it, this time from an up-close fighting power, with the weapons also having the ability for quick kills up close. And with Splatoon 3's metagame, you could deal with all three of these counters at the same time. A weapon that breaks your shield at a distance, a weapon that breaks your shield up close, and another one that can hit around your shield if you're trying to play in the middle ground. There was just no winning there. The counters actually work against Brella in this game where they didn't before. And so the actual problem is that both of these have combined for a very nasty combo at dealing with the weapon. And so the weapon's power basically tanked off a cliff when it was put in the game, even if there was never any Brella shield problem to begin with. Splatoon 2 balanced the weapon around a game that catered to the weapon, and then there was no adjustment made when switching to a game that actively dealt with them. Now, hold on. Some of you might realize that I've talked about Tent before as being good in Splatoon 3 mainly because it has a great ability to slow down the fast kill times and combos that are very important in this game. And that is true, but not only does Tent have far more shielding power than the other weapons, but most importantly, it has reasons for those counters to be scared of the weapon. It's one shot and Trizuka. Have a weapon like Splatana try to dash in and kill the shield, and it can get one tapped for it. Have a charger try to shoot it at a distance, and you can Zuka them. Tent not only works because the weapon has better stats, but also because those better stats give it options at dealing with the counters. It creates a situation where even weapons with a good matchup into it have to carefully consider the way they approach the weapon because they can be quickly and easily punished by it if they mess up. That threat power just isn't there for the other weapons. You can make a lot of mistakes when challenging them and not be punished properly because the stats and weapon kits are overall weaker to the point where they don't really have the ability to punish you for those mistakes. And to be clear, I don't think a kit change will fix this. It'll help, but it won't be enough. It's very similar to the current buffs, which are things I honestly don't have a whole lot of time to talk about. Like, yeah, it's nice that the Brella shields come back faster, but if they're able to break your shield like that, they're probably going to be able to kill you before that long amount of a time has passed. The ink efficiency changes or paint changes to recycle are nice too, but again, they don't really solve the core problem. What I'm getting at here is that there's really only two routes to buff Brellas, which is either increasing their shielding power or increasing their damage potential. Now, I'm not as big a fan of giving it more shielding power, unless you're Recycle, which does actually have some decent damage and has such a pathetic shield that it makes sense to buff it, but it would definitely still help. Obviously, if you can tank a little bit longer, it gives more potential that their stalling power will be valuable, which it obviously is on Tent. But how far would that number need to go to be meaningfully impactful might be too high. I wouldn't mind it on a smaller scale, but if you do it on a smaller scale, it probably won't be enough to help the weapon. And so, as I'm getting at here, I think for the most part, this is a damage problem. I don't really mind weapons like Splatana's being able to break the shields quickly. I think that it's really important that you have some classes that can tread it fast because others can't, and having matchups and counters to it was very important to this weapon's balance. I think the problem here is that there's no way to punish it. Again, when I talked about Tent, remember that if you mess up, there is a threat there, but there really isn't for these. The lack of damage on Undercover and Brella makes it so weak to the point where you don't really have to worry about being punished as much, something that used to be a problem. I could see some people pointing out that this might cause too much overlap between Brella and Recycle in particular, since Recycle got old Brella's maximum damage. And, well, one, I think the pellet damage numbers are the thing that actually matters, not the maximum, and two, I want to take a look at Luna Blaster and S-Blast, two very similar short-range blaster modes, but Luna still got to have a larger radius, and S-Blast still got to be faster, despite overlapping with each other. Why shouldn't the case be the same thing here, with two weapons that are honestly more distinct than them. Do I think a damage buff or shield HP buff would be enough to fix it? Honestly, I'm not sure. I don't know what exact number would be good enough to make the weapon functional, because it's honestly fallen so far down the rankings that it's really hard to see if it would even be enough for it or not. We really will only know if it's actually tested, and we've never gotten that opportunity before. Will this ever change for Brellas? I'm not sure. Unfortunately, Brellas were really good in Splatoon 2, and not only is Nintendo generally hesitant to buff things, let alone buff them in such a drastic area like damage or shield HP, but they're even more hesitant to buff weapons that have been good in the past, and, well, that happens to apply to all of them. I think it really sucks because Brella's role in being able to slow down kill times and check certain matchups are incredibly important for the game's health, but for now, I really do hope one day that there'll be some consideration to give the weapon something. I think the players have dealt with Brellas in this balance spot for quite long enough, frankly. Thanks for watching.